Okay, so without further ado, Susan, would you like to introduce our first presenter while I take care of stuff over here?
Sure. So, Susan, I'm introducing you to everybody who's been working with you for all these months and already knows you. Um, and I think everybody knows what you do. You're pretty extraordinary in terms of well, you bring to this table all your many, many years of work, but then your curiosity and your development in biotensegrity, which has just been lovely to watch. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to share screen. I want to say my project is done a very little bit. When we joined the class and we were going to do a project, I said, "Oh, good, this will give me a chance to kind of think about ideas and things like that." It's I took this class during a very busy time in my life for all kinds of reasons, but it was great to periodically touch base in. I'll show you how I do that. And the first time I'm going, officially the first time anyway, I'm going to be presenting at least a section of my project will be all the way in October, although a couple of other opportunities are coming up sooner, but I'm not stressing myself. I've got so much stress in my life. I'm not stressing it more with another schedule. I'm doing it as I can, and I love to do it, so I go back to it frequently. So I'm going to share screen. Let's see. Can I just share? Yeah. Hmm. Okay. So what I do is I have a Mac, so I'm in Keynote, and I just start making slides, and this is just telling me where I've put it, just
Ah,
in
nice.
case. And then I put in a lot of blank screens because that kind of gives me divisions. And then I just start collecting slides. So, for example, I have a whole lot of slides of Thomas Hanna. I won't go through all of them, but, and Eleanor, this is the day after Tom died. And that's when we met Eleanor Criswell, his wife, for the first time. And then I have some pictures of her and one of Feldenkrais. Moshe and Tom and Eleanor were very good friends. And this is Moshe Feldenkrais and Thomas Hanna, 1975. And then I have a collection of other pictures like Eleanor. She loved to work with animals, horses and dogs and humans, but she had an affinity for animals. Well, she had affinity for all animals, including humans, but she was just extraordinary with animals, and she was about to embark on working with elephants when she died, which was in September of 2024. And this is our graduating class in Hanna Somatic Education. We started with Thomas Hanna, who died during our training, and then Eleanor. This is Eleanor. Can you see my cursor? This is Eleanor, and this is me with dark hair. And then I collect, this is one of our Hanna-Somatic educators. She works with Cirque du Soleil. She, you can imagine the toll on her body. And then she got Lyme's disease, and then she recovered from that. Anyway, a very interesting woman, and continues as a teacher in Cirque du Soleil. This is probably at least 10 years old. I'm not quite sure, maybe even a little bit more. And then this is just often what a section of our classroom might look like. This is my teaching partner, Phil Shank. And then we often show pictures of reflexive pendiculations, which like a yawn or like what they call the cat stretch, which is not a stretch. But anyway, so I collect these kinds of pictures, and it illustrates aspects of the kinds of postural patterns we work with. This is me working on the floor in Tom Hanna's training in 1990 with one of my classmates. And anyway, I just collect pictures of various kinds. Again, I use blank. Tell me when my time is running short. I use blanks to sort of create sections for myself. I write all kinds of slides with notes to myself. Remember to do this, remember to do that, be sure you do this, be sure you do that. So these are important to me because these will all, everything I've shown so far will either be integrated or disappeared, but I won't use every picture of Thomas Hanna, blah, blah, blah. And I just have, I looked up reflexive pandiculation in Wiki because most people think of pandiculation as the reflexive physiological reflex of pandiculation, and that is not how we used it. I feel it's unfortunate that Thomas Hanna used the word pandiculation because we are not doing the physiological pandiculation. Eleanor finally named it in the literature. We are doing a voluntary pandiculation. And it's it's so far from a reflexive pandiculation, and it's created great confusion. And I think it was a bad choice of vocabulary in my opinion. And then other things that I become very interested. I love Rupert Sheldrake. He's got I follow him, and he's got some really interesting stuff on science and first and second person, or first person anyway, which is your personal experience of something, your subjective experience, versus third person, and how science has co-opted third person because they thought it made it more professional or something. And his opinion on that, how that's really been too bad for science, but science is coming around, and much more science is now couched in first and second person. Second person meaning a second person is about addressing somebody. If I say, "Hey, your attention," you immediately are called to attention. And in scientific experimentation, if you do an experiment and I do an experiment and we both write it up in first person, here is what I did, blah, blah, blah. The other person does that. We do the experiment, we share our results. Maybe they're the same, maybe they're different. But if they are the same experiment done the same way and you get the same results, it is a form of collaboration and corroboration of often what third person is trying to say. The results were. But you can couch those results, perhaps, depending on how you've organized it into first person. Anyway, I think it's very important for science today. And anyway, these are just notes to myself. I'm going to collect some of the Gimbarto. I'm finally going to learn how to spell his name. I just never get it right. Just notes to myself. I collect various pictures. So when I get to the part in my presentation when we're going to do spirality and helical kinds of things, I'll be drawing on certain pictures I collect. I love to collect different pictures. And these are just some of the kinds of pictures I've collected, a lot more to collect. And then in my own teaching, even though I'm not doing a formal presentation, but in my own current teaching, I call them my personal aphorisms, or they're my personal sayings. The one that's caught on the very most is parts, no parts. That's talking about, so often we talk about parts, old model, no parts, biotensegrity. But my students and the people, I mentor a lot of my colleagues and graduates, and they love the parts, no parts, because it's been a really great catch-all phrase. By the way, anybody can use any of these things, and I'm open to feedback and suggestions. Another one I use is our brain needs a body. That is so confusing to people. It takes a little time for them to understand it. But one of the things I might do is I'll say, okay, I'm going to give you some instructions. You can only use your head. You can't use any part of your body. And I'll ask them to do something. And they start moving their hands. I go, no, no, no. You can't move your hands. You only have a brain in your head. Anyway, they finally kind of get it, but we've been so divorced in our culture from brain and body that I have to say this a lot. And then some people go, oh yeah, that's right, of course. And you can kind of see they don't quite have it yet, but it takes a long time to digest these things. Our body lives in an environment. Again, that has been really new and astonishing to people. And then we are more than our body. This is a personal opinion, but Tom always used soma, meaning body, mind, and spirit. The word soma, S-O-M-A, body, mind, and spirit. Anyway, I am going to incorporate some of these sayings in, and then I'm going to. Now I'm starting my series, my ideas for my series. It's color coded, but my color coding, I forget what color I use, and then I go back and I realize I've used the wrong color. But anyway, that'll all get worked out. So the class series and my project that I've begun because of this class is Biotensegrity and Fascia, a class series. And so here's my opening. How does learning about biotensegrity and fascia help you work with yourself and clients more creatively and effectively, be a better teacher? Will I have to learn some new things? Yes, and it's worth it. Will it be fun? Of course. So I never know what I'm going to change in the end. But then I'm going to do an overview. I don't quite have it down yet. So I probably will keep these 6 classes as they are, but then I have a listing of a whole lot of other possible classes, or some of these things will get incorporated into maybe I end up with 10 classes. My classes, I don't know how long they'll be. What I'd like to actually develop are more classes at less time, like a series of 30-minute classes. And I'll probably come in and out of being on, if it's on Zoom, I'll come in and out of share, do some things, in person on Zoom. Other class and other things will be by slides, but I want to develop something that I can have the slideshow be complete as is and show it, even if it's more than one 30-minute class, if that's what I end up doing per sitting. That is to be decided. And so then I'll start with, so green, this green indicates a new class. And so this would be class 1, paradigm shift from machine model and biomechanics to nature's model and biotensegrity. And then I've defined paradigm as a model. And then I've got some pictures I've collected. I haven't put everything in, but so class 1 has pictures. It has information. I haven't done the information yet. I know I have to get permission from Steve Levin to use these pictures. I have a note at the beginning of one of my beginning slides about I have to get permission for a number of slides. And so I have the George Box quote. And so I'm intermixing. This is not at all finished, but I'm intermixing pictures and information. I know I'm going fast, but I'm just giving you an idea of some of the things that I've collected. And then when I'm in yellow frame with pink inside, it means some kind of guided movement or guided experience. This is just talking about some of the foundational kind of rules of the road: no forcing, no imposing, etc., etc. And then I'm going to develop. Movement is going to be the easiest part for me to develop. It's everything else around movement that's going to take more work, but I will put definitely time into the movement activities I select. But sometimes I just have slides with notes on them. Other times I have slides that are a little bit more developed, and other ideas for movement. And as I come up with ideas, I might insert them in just slides to be developed. This is a comparison between moving more mechanically from biomechanics. What should I fix? Relax your shoulders, lengthen your spine, those kinds of cues, versus biotensegrity. And that's part of a class 1, and that may be actually 3 classes. I don't know yet how long it's going to take. Some classes may be a series of several classes. Some may be just self-contained. So this green is the second class, pretension, fascia, and our oneness. Every class, and that from the second class on, this color is going to be, I'm going to start class with review and enhancement. What we covered so far, or at least a few aspects of it, I think review is really important. And then enhancement means, and maybe not just review, but continue on with another aspect. Let's say I'm reviewing biotensegrity. Well, I'm going to enhance that in every class in some way or in many classes. And then I'll go into the didactic. And so here's where I haven't, my color coding isn't that great, but I'm going to start doing didactic. And then here's some ideas, things I want to do. This is something from AI I pulled that I may or may not use. And again, just didactic. And then this is just telling me to choose some pictures. These are various pictures that I really love that expresses the wholeness of the body. These are actually this picture I'm going to have to eliminate because I don't have permission to use it, and I inquired and it was really expensive. So that one will have to go. But right now they're just in there because I can look for non-copyright pictures to fulfill it if I really want to have a picture at all. But it shows the wrapping around under the skin, and that's valuable to a lot of people because they have no idea if you took off the skin, you don't exactly look like that, but you kind of look like that in just pictures of fascia, different pictures, and accumulation of pictures. I really like this one because it shows how connected. For a long time, fascia was talked about as layers, and you could remove a layer, but this shows all the connection between the quote layers, no layers kind of concept. Classical pictures, the extracellular matrix type pictures, and then back to some guided movement and ideas for that. Bruna, I've given you absolute credit for anchors. I'm using anchors. I love them. I'm going to start using them, if not in the first class, in the second class. And I've worked and looked at your videos a number of times. So thank you so much. And I want to absolutely give you credit. And then just different possible ideas. This came right out of the video we saw in here or in some class with where you're making your body, into a triangle or into a trapezoid or into a five, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 5 bar. And I'm going to use that. I think that's wonderful. And then more didactic and it's just a wealth of information, and I'm not even finished at all. I want to definitely, this just tells me I want to have something on the extracellular matrix. I want to have something on phase changes. I'm not sure exactly where it's all going to go. This class 2 is already probably 2 to 4 classes.
So Susan, I'm just going to jump
Yeah.
in and say that you have had your 15 minutes, but you're
Okay.
welcome to just hurry through the end
Okay.
because we've got a little bit of extra time today.
Okay, so this is going to be my third class, probably will be on auxeticity and auxetic behavior, again, review and enhancement. I actually have a lot of props. I have a Hoberman sphere, and I'll quit share and use them, and then movement activities and didactic, which I haven't done very much on, and then class 4 on forces, again, review and enhancement, and then didactic on forces, a little bit. I haven't completed it, and then this is kind of in the wrong place. It's okay. It's just more didactic and movement ideas. And then on to class 5, movement, CKCs, closed kinetic change, and the geometry of motion, review and enhancement, didactic, etc. And Chris, I'll officially ask for your permission in an email, but I need to get your, so this is a note. Susan, get Chris's permission. And then more guided movement, more concepts. This is to remind me somewhere to start inserting information about brain, nervous system, neurophysiology, and possible ways we can start interconnecting it with biotensegrity. Somewhere that's going to be important to my community because they spent a lot of time, quote, studying the brain and the nervous system, class 6 spirals and helical movement, and then classes 7 through 12 or 7 through 20 or whatever is just a whole lot of stuff. I want to get in shear. I want to get in cognition. I want to get in pain. I want to get in fractal patterns, ecological psychology. I want to talk about language. There's a lot of things, embryology. So I just have to figure out if these are classes or parts of other classes, but it just helps me not forget.
Okay.
And then,
Excellent, Susan.
anyway,
Can you
that's
close
it.
it up and then we'll have a
Yeah.
couple of
And
minutes
yeah,
for
and
comments.
that's it. I'll come out of share.
Thank you so much. I mean, one of the things that I wasn't expecting to learn, but that is really valuable for me is to see your process.
Huh.
Like if I will, I could learn a lot. Well, I am learning a lot from that. I love the way that you're using the keynote and to put, because I'm not a very, believe it or not, I'm not all that organized. And so I spend a lot of time looking for things that I know I saw somewhere, but the way you've done this and the way that you're integrating is really, it's a gift to see that.
Well, developed a lot of curriculum, and this is how I do it. I do it
Yes.
through keynote slides because I have a record and it's great. And anyway, yeah, that is my process. And as you can see, it's quite far from being done. I don't feel I have to finish the whole thing to start teaching.
It does look to me like a lifelong project. There's so much in there, but I'm looking at the time and we've got maybe 2 minutes, maybe a three to have some comments, some questions for Susan. So if
Can you talk a little more about that parts, no parts? What do you mean by that?
Okay, so parts is coming out of of the engineering construction where we talk about parts. And then biotensegrity, there are no parts. We are a whole. And as I go through the explanation of the difference between the mechanical model and the biotensegrity model, I start using the concept of parts, no parts. And it becomes kind of a mantra that my students and the people I mentor, my clients have loved because it's really helped them encapsulize in a short phrase what they're used to thinking in, which is parts. You know, I have a shoulder, I have a liver, whatever, and no parts. It's integrated. It takes the whole to function.
Mhm. Okay. So, but I mean, So, but of course we have our different aspects, the heart, the lungs, whatever. I mean, those are there, but
The parts, no parts. You can talk about parts.
so you can talk about that duality. Is that part of
Yes,
what?
you have the duality because I
Okay.
teach the anatomy, and if I'm doing something on organs or if I'm doing something on the shoulder girdle, I am going to be I'm going to be focusing in on parts, and then I'm going to integrate the class in the
Yeah,
integration of that into the whole class. So it's parts, no parts, and the legitimate use of parts to learn something, and the real understanding of there are no parts.
I love it. Thank you.
I do
Oh, over
too.
to you, Jason.
Um, Thank you. So I think the framing that you used in the presentation is review, enhance, and integrate. And you know, because of your association with Hannah and the history, you know, um, there were a lot of early pioneers,
Yeah.
Hannah and Rolf and a lot of people at that time a sort of like this first wave of somatic um, uh, in practitioners and theorists, etc. So I'm just wondering, how you see with that historical perspective, and you and Mary, I think we're very lucky to have in this class. How the um, uh, you know, how the early first wave people were so close to having so much of the uh, um, phenomenology, I'm going to say, worked out. You talk about, I'm not sure if you mentioned, but I think, uh, you know, in your answer to Susan, but, these whole integrated, no parts, these are phenomenological concepts, which you're trying to mix in the lectures and, with mix of, and I'm going to use the word mechanical, but, physics and more scientific concepts. And so, was going back to that first wave, was that a challenge then, and has it gotten any easier or better? Do you have a historical view on this, how the way our understanding of a biotensegrity body has allowed you to, enhance and integrate both the mechanical and the phenomenological? Sorry for the long
Yeah.
question.
Well, Tom did not have the vocabulary of biotensegrity. He was a phenomenologist for sure. Um, and But he had the sense of wholeness, the soma, the body as experienced from within, our first person whole experience. We don't so anyway, and that was, he always brought that out. Our particular lineage in Hanasomatic education is like Elsa Gindler and Charlotte Selver and Moshe Feldenkrais. And he talked about the lineage. And of course, we all went and looked it up. And some of us, I mean, I did a class with Charlotte Selver when she was 94 years old. And
Can,
it was an incredible experience. I never did a class with Elsa Gindler. I'm not sure she was even alive. Anyway, but so he talked about lineages and what they brought to it, and his experience and influence, including people like John Dewey at the University of Chicago in the 40s and 50s, or 50s and 60s. I'm not quite sure. And his impact on education, which was a very sort of holistic education. So he talked about it and he had it, and um, I still came out of the training. I came out of the training with a respect for the soma, but I was still working. We were still working in parts. And there was talk about integration because Tom had a sequence of what he called the cat stretch. Again, stretch, we don't stretch in our work. And it was an unfortunate turn of phrase, I think, but I call it the cat routine. And it was a series of exercises or movements that work with every part of the body. And if you did them all, you eventually got to every part of the body, and some were more local and some were more global. But
can,
it wasn't until I came into biotensegrity that I really got what Thomas was saying a lot with the soma, and how much that came across in the he only was with us for 5 weeks, 15 days before he died.
mm. I guess and you don't have to answer this. I know
Yeah.
time's limited and Chris probably wants to move on, but like, I guess the question underneath my question is, do we need biotensegrity to understand and learn movement? And do we only need it because it's a correction from the anatomical and mechanical errors of the past, but the somatic theorists offer a way of learning and understanding movement that doesn't have to be anatomical or theoretical?
Well, I'm sure you could not use the word biotensegrity, but come back to somatic, whole body, but I like the word biotensegrity.
We all like the word
I like,
biotensegrity.
I like the addition to the vocabulary. I
Sure.
find when I
But
hear the word
the question
soma,
is when like you as a teacher,
yeah.
it depends on, I guess, what everybody's goal is as a teacher or practitioner. But, you know, um, if I was teaching somebody running, which I've tried to do, by being theoretical or anatomical or even, you know, like it complicates the ultimate objective. And, that's very different from maybe a therapeutic or clinical setting. So I just leave that as an open question,
I
maybe
think it depends
for
on how you,
everybody in the group. I think
I think it
I'd like to
depends
hear
on
everybody's thoughts on that.
I
I
think
think
it
that's,
depends on your learning style.
Mm.
yeah, and I think that's a great question, Jason. Thank you for asking it. Susan Lowell, go ahead, and then we'll
Yeah,
move on.
thank you. Susan, can you explain we don't stretch? What do you mean we don't stretch?
Okay, so in really quickly, in the United States, I can't really speak for other places, but so many people came out of yoga, came into the training, and they completely misinterpreted what they were doing, and they were pulling and yanking.
Oh,
And so in it, so much of yoga these days, or at least in the time when Tom was teaching and he looked at people doing yoga, because he taught yoga too, he hated that they were pulling and yanking and forcing. And so he said, no stretching. He tried to eliminate that because people so misconstrued. Not only did you have to have the right pants from Lululemon, but you had to yank and you had to pull. And he really wanted that out of the vocabulary because stretching meant so many things to so many people. I think it just means to lengthen, actually. I'm not even sure. So we stopped using the word stretching as much as possible. And then he names his daily routine the cat stretch. It's like, ah. Anyway, so
okay. So
it's
it's a
the forcing
somatic
it.
thing. So it's
It's
a
a
somatic.
somatic thing
Yeah, thank you.
because of forcing.
Yeah, yeah,
So people go lengthen.
yeah.
You can force and yank with lengthen too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was fantastic.